The American Yawp, Chapter 26. The golden age of America in the 1950s was driven by a booming economy and a sense of purpose in the fight against communism. These positives, however, blinded many Americans to the social problems still plaguing pockets of their country. The relative affluence and cultural homogeneity of the 1950s lulled middle-class Americans into relative complacency on matters of social equality and justice. Elderly Americans, rural sharecroppers, the grandchildren of slaves living in America's inner cities, coal miners, cotton growers, rural Hispanics, and Native Americans on remote reservations all remained mired in poverty, with many of those groups facing unyielding discrimination in the workplace, in educational opportunity, and in the attainment of decent housing. As affluent whites fled to newly developed post-war suburbs, the inner cities in America became ghettos or repositories for America's poor. Powered by the GI Bill, 1/3 of Americans were living in the suburbs by 1960. Suburban wives, suddenly geographically isolated from the job opportunities they'd had during World War II, retreated back to child rearing. Though libertarian politics and evangelical religion found a new home among this conservative suburban constituency, the post-war generation was raised in increasing affluence, but many, particularly young people, were left unsatisfied with their comfortable lives, prompting a spirit of rebellion exemplified by the rise of rock and roll. Television became the number one source for news and entertainment by the late 1950s. The dominant whiteness of pop culture in the 50s and early 60s accelerated the alienation of American minorities and may have actually prompted the social upheavals of the late 1960s. Safe, white bread television may have inadvertently highlighted the privileges of whiteness for the have-nots still scraping by in America. After decades of skirmishes, an open battle began in the 1950s against Jim Crow racial segregation and the rampant discrimination that marked the South. In 1954, the Supreme Court found in their Brown versus Board of Education of Topeka decision that segregation, or the separate but equal principle that they had previously allowed in public schools, was in fact unconstitutional. In response, a massive resistance of white people across the South organized to defy the ruling, as the post-Civil War Southern social order was now under threat. Among other leaders, Martin Luther King Jr., a Baptist minister, began to lead and inspire boycott movements in schools, on buses, at lunch counters, across the South using a nonviolent ideology he co-opted from Gandhi, even in the face of violence, which gave his cause the moral high ground on those television news reports people were tuning into. The Cold War made racial injustice an embarrassment to many white Americans trying to present their nation as a model to the world. And those who opposed Cold War politics increasingly found themselves supporting and participating in the civil rights movement. For all his moderation and popularity, the former World War II general, President Dwight D. Eisenhower, and his inner circle were unable to peaceably resolve the issues of the Cold War. They had implemented a hardline policy of massive retaliation against the Soviet Union across the 50s and confronted global challenges head-on. Still, his moderation was increasingly out of vogue with the Republican Party, whose rightward drift would be evident with the nomination of Barry Goldwater in 1964. He was out of touch with liberal reformers who would soon again take the reins of the federal government. In his farewell address to the nation, Eisenhower publicly admitted his own worries about a growing military-industrial complex in America that might prevent a Cold War peace from ever actually being attained.